Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to talk about slopes of lines. So we've been working a lot with equations. Now we're going to get into talking about what happens when we go to graph these lines. Okay, we've been dealing with alternate interior, vertical, things like that. Now we're going to look at the graph. All right. So first of all, our objective today, find the slope of a line, use slopes to identify parallel and perpendicular. All right. So the slope of a line in a coordinate plane, there's a couple ways that you can do it. All right. If you are graphing, which we'll talk about, it's rise over run, and you're always going to go to the right. You look at it from left to right. So if you see a line going up, you'll see how far up and over you go, and we'll talk about that. It could also be fall over run if it's a negative slope. So how far down and over you're going. But again, you're always going to the right. All right, and then the equation that we're going to use, first of all, it's m equals, this is not given to you, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Another way that you'll see it is change in y value over change in x. All right, and again, that is not given to you. You might want to highlight that. That'd be a good idea. All right. So we'll look at both ways to find the slope. On the regions, you'll always have graph paper if you need it, but it is helpful to use the formula, and we'll talk about it. All right, if you have a positive slope, you're going to see a line that's increasing from left to right. If you have a negative slope, you're going to see a line that's decreasing from left to right. And then for zero and no slope, one's horizontal, one's vertical. Zero slope would be a line that goes horizontally straight across, and no slope would be a vertical line that goes straight up and down. And an easy way to tell the difference, Z, you can make this line into a Z to remind you zero, and this line we can make into an N to remind us that there's no slope. Sometimes instead of no slope, a lot of times you'll see undefined. Okay, so an undefined slope is the same as no slope. All right, but first we're going to practice with the formula. All right, and just like with the y2s and 1s from the distance and midpoint formulas, it's just standing for the 2 points. And it doesn't matter which point you start with. So we have x and y in this point, x and y in this point. I would suggest that you write the formula down. The more you write it, the more likely it is you're going to remember it. And if you want to simplify it a bit, you can just say y minus y over x minus x. All right, so let's start with our y's. Again, you can say 3 minus 5 or 5 minus 3. It doesn't matter. So if I do, and same with your y's, all right, 4 minus negative 10 or negative 10 minus 4. All right, but again, we're starting with our y's on top. So the change in y, I'm going to do 4 minus negative 10. And since I started with 4, I have to start with 3 minus 5. All right, so when we simplify, that's the same as 4 plus 10 over negative 2. 14 divided by negative 2 is a slope of negative 7. And it starts with an m because remember when we're looking at the equation y equals mx plus b, the slope's found with x, which we'll get into in the next lesson, but that's why it starts with an m. Now, you may have learned to start with the second point, and that's fine. So if you did it the other way, y minus y would have been negative 10 minus 4. And since I started with negative 10, I'd have to do 5 minus 4. You end up getting negative 14 over 2, which is also negative 7. So it doesn't matter which way you go with it, you'll get the same slope. I tend to just go from left to right. Okay, let's do it again. So y minus y over x minus x. Again, the more you write it, the more likely it is you'll remember. If it helps, write your x and y's here. All right, so negative 2 minus negative 12. Remember, y is on top. And then 5 minus negative 3. And simplify. So that's negative 2 plus 12, which is the same as 10. And this is 5 plus 3, which is the same as 8. You can simplify by dividing both by 2. If you're not good at simplifying, you've got a calculator that will do it for you. 10 divided by 8. Math. Enter, enter. 5/4. You always want to leave your slope as a fraction. Makes it a lot easier with a lot of the things we're going to be doing. If you did it the other way, you would have ended up with negative 10 over negative 8. And again, you'd want to put it in to get a positive 5/4. You don't want to leave two negatives in. All right, the other way to do this is by using the graph. And just remember, it's the change in y. Sorry for that sloppy writing there. Change in x. All right, so this is our y-axis. This is our x. So basically, find any 2 points on there. Always start at the one that's furthest to the left. And so to get from here down to here, I'm going to go down 2 over 4. Down 2 over 4. So it's negative 2 over 4. And notice how I did that. A lot of times I'll see people write 4 over 2. You went over 4 and you're saying over 4. All right? Think about how you would say. We don't say, oh, this fraction is negative 4 over negative 2. No, it's negative 2 over 4. So whatever you go over should be on the bottom of your fraction. And again, simplify that, negative 1/2. So that means if you go down 1 over 2, down 1 over 2, that's your slope, instead of having to use the equation. All right, and we'll work with both of those. All right, on the next page, let's just get some practice in. I apologize for the points, but it wants us to find the slope. I can see that it is increasing, so it's a positive slope. Just grab any 2 points. I can see that one, and let's go with that one. Okay, you don't want to choose anything that's partway between the lines. You want something that's going directly over it. I know some of these lines are kind of hard to see, but now just start on the point that's furthest to the left, and we're going up 2 over 3. If you go up 2 over 3 again, up 2 over 3, you just keep going up 2 over 3, so your slope is positive 2 over 3. Again, the top number tells you whether you go up or down, and then the bottom number is what you go over, 2 over 3. You go up the y and then over x. All right, a couple more examples here. Little word problem. So it says, Justin is driving home to his college dormitory. At 4 p.m., he's 260 miles from home. At 7 p.m., he's 450 miles from home. Graph the line that represents Justin's distance from home at a given time and find and interpret the slope. All right, so there's a couple ways you can look at this. The graph's already there for you. So here's Justin at the first point, and here he is at the second point. All right, so you could do it graphically. All right, but remember, you're trying to figure out your change in y over your change in x. So it's kind of tough to see. We can see that we're going over 3, but it's kind of hard to tell what we're going up, so you might have to subtract. Another way to look at it, you got 2 points here. Okay, so this would be the point 4. At 4 o'clock, he's 260 miles. At 7 o'clock, he's 455 miles. Here's your x's and your y's. Remember, change in y. So if you want, you can go this way to deal with all positives. So 455 minus 260 to find how far he'd traveled. And since I did 455 minus 260, I have to do 7 minus 4. All right, go to the calculator. 455 minus 260, 195. In a total of 3 hours. So I'll divide that by 3. Equals 65 over 1, which means when it'll say interpret means use information from the problem, what does that mean? That's the slope, but what does it mean from the problem? It means that his average speed is 65 miles per hour. Again, if you were doing it graphically, you'd see you go from 260 up to 455, so that would be up 195 over 3. Whoop. Okay. One last little bit to talk about parallel and perpendicular. Now we know parallel lines never intersect, right? And perpendicular lines intersect to form right angles. Well, on a graph, there's a quick and easy way to figure that out. Parallel lines have slopes that are the same. Okay? Because if you're going up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2 for that line, you're doing the same from here. You're just starting at a different point. Perpendicular lines have slopes that are called negative reciprocals. And what that means is if one slope is, say, 5 halves, then it would be perpendicular to a line that has a negative 2 over 5. You flip and change the sign. Which makes sense because you're going the exact opposite way in a different direction when you're dealing with perpendicular. So if the slope was initially negative 4, perpendicular to that, well, as a fraction, that'd be negative 1 over 4. So perpendicular to that would be positive 1 over 4 instead of negative 4 over 1. I think I just misspoke. All right, so let's finish it up. Here's our line. Y equals 4x minus 6. Remember from algebra, and we've talked a little bit about it in your LTAs, this is your slope, the number with x. So what is the slope of the line? First of all, the slope of this line is 4. What's the slope of the line parallel to it? Well, they have the same slope, so that would also have a slope of 4. What's the slope of a line perpendicular to it? Well, 4 over 1 would be perpendicular to negative 1 over 4. Okay? Same slope, different slope. All right, what is the slope of a line parallel to this? Well, I can't tell what the slope is. It doesn't say y equals. I got to get it into that form first. So if it helps, draw the line down. We'll subtract that 4x out of there. So we're left with, I'm going to write it over here so I have more space, 2y equals, instead of 6 minus 4x, remember you're trying to make it look like this, y equals mx plus b. You can't combine them. Negative 4x and positive 6. Divide everything by 2. So your equation is y equals negative 2x plus 3. All right, so if it's parallel to that, it's going to have the same slope, negative 2. All right, same thing with the next one. Before you can tell if it's perpendicular, you need to solve for y. So I'm going to subtract the 3x to the other side. Because again, you always, coming back to algebra, want it to look like that. Y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to move the x to the other side. I have negative 2y equals negative 3x plus 8. Divide everything by negative 2. So y equals positive 3 halves x. And then 8 divided by negative 2 would be negative 4. So there's your equation. Your slope's 3 halves. So if it's if it said what's parallel slope, it'd be 3 halves. But perpendicular to it would have to be negative 2 over 3. All right, so we talked about quite a bit today. So you have your slope formula, y minus y over x minus x. Or you can use the graph, rise over run. How far up or down and over. And then parallel lines have the same slope. Perpendicular lines have negative reciprocals. Might have to do a little bit of algebra to get y by itself, but we'll get some practice with that. All right, tomorrow in class especially. So tomorrow when you come in, we'll plan on working on the next 2 pages. So we have pages 13 and 14 where we'll practice finding the slope graphically. And then and then we'll go from there. All right, so again, make sure you get those notes in. It's important that you put them in your packet so you have them. I will be checking. Have a great day, guys.